Deep Space Nine is back with a fourth and final issue of Too Long a Sacrifice. Throughout the series, we've watched as Constable Odo and a Betazoid special investigator Retlaw have investigated a series of seemingly unconnected murders aboard Deep Space Nine. Hello everyone, my name is Captain Jack and welcome to Trek Central. If you're new to this brand new comic, let me introduce you. Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Too Long a Sacrifice, returns readers to the space station of DS9, where in the middle of the Dominion War, Constable Odo is tasked with solving a deadly series of unconnected murders. 3 issues have led us to this moment, so let's explore this conclusion. Spoiler warning. If you're new around here and want to stay up to date with the latest Star Trek developments in news, lore and more, make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video, and follow us on social media to get daily updates on the Trek universe. With few substantial leads and the threat of the Dominion War looming overhead, time is of the essence to find the killer on the station. When we last left Constable Odo and investigator Retlaw, the two were questioning a Bajoran Vedic, who had mysterious ties with a Cardassian occupation. After probing the mind of Vedic Teller, it quickly becomes clear to Retlaw that while Teller was a collaborator to the Cardassian regime, he had nothing to do with the recent murders. In a fit of rage, Vedic Teller lashes out at Odo for accusing him of these crimes, especially because Odo was present during the occupation and knew what it's like to live under the cruel Cardassian rule. Vedic Teller did things that he's not proud of, but he is no killer. Despite this failure to convict Vedic Teller, he does give Odo a pivotal idea. Back in the newly reconstructed Lavin's eatery, which was destroyed in the bombing in the first issue, Odo brings up the idea that the two were present during the occupation. Just like Vedic, this prompts Odo to think of others that are present during the occupation itself, which leads him to none other than Lavin herself. As Lavin approaches Odo and Retlaw's table, Retlaw probes her mind and finds the truth of what really happened. It is interesting that Retlaw forgoes his rule that someone must consent to being probed. Vedic Teller was a real suspect, and yet Retlaw still asked him for permission before scanning his mind. The idea that Lavin is the culprit is purely a hunch on Odo's part. This may be a character flaw from Retlaw, or it may just be an oversight from the writer. We then see an intense flashback from Lavin's perspective during the occupation. We see the Cardassians murder her brother, the collaborator Kaidan, who was murdered in the first issue eating with a group of Ferengi, who was killed in the third issue, and Lavin's attempts to seduce Ensign Shodir to help her cover her tracks in planting the bomb and her series of murders. After the mind probe, Lavin realizes that Retlaw knows the truth and sprints out of the restaurant, engaging in an intense chase with Odo and Retlaw. After help from Chief O'Brien and Major Kira, the chase comes to head in Quark's bar, of course. After cornering Lavin, Odo uses shape-shifting abilities to form a giant fist and knock her down with the aid of Retlaw. In the series, we never get to see Odo extensively use his shape-shifting abilities due to the CGI budget that was never very high. Although the imagery of a giant yellow fist is reminiscent of something out of Green Lantern, it's still kind of exciting to see Odo utilize his abilities unfettered. After the altercation at the bar, Lavin is seen stirring in the brig. Dr. Bashir explains that normally she'd be sent to a mental institution, but there are too many parties calling out for her confinement to move her safely. Major Kira questions what made Lavin snap, and Bashir can only posit that Lavin's wounds from the occupation were so great that her hatred consumed her. Kira of all people should understand this. She too was hurt during the occupation and fought for Bajor's freedom. Back in Station Ops, Odo debriefs with Captain Sisko, Major Kira, and Dax. After Sisko informs Odo that the ambassador's anger has been quelled and that everyone is relieved that the case is solved, Odo remarks that the history of the station and the occupation never really goes away. This line itself sums up the thesis of this series is all about. The title itself, Too Long a Sacrifice, is about the repeated sacrifice that the Bajorans had to make during the occupation, and the lasting trauma that has been inflicted for their people. For too long did Lavin have to suck in her gut and accept Cardassian rule, as they murdered her family and enslaved her people. It was only a matter of time before the personal sacrifices she made to stay alive would get the best of her and consume her with malice and revenge. In our final scene, Odo says goodbye to Retlaw. The two admit they had initial reservations about the other, but in the end they both valued their presence in the investigation. The two learn to put their differences aside and look past their judgment and work together as equals. Retlaw says that he hopes he'll cross paths with Odo again, perhaps prompting a sequel series of Odo and Retlaw, but for now, nothing has been officially announced thus far. While Retlaw has a unique character, he did not provide as much to us to foil Odo as we'd hoped. It was interesting to see a Betazoid use his telepathic powers for criminal investigation, something we have rarely seen. But his approach to crime solving was not all that different from Odo's himself. The only aspect that made him different was his telepathy, which would have perhaps been more interesting to see an investigator that had a completely different approach to crime solving than Odo, maybe one is a bit more off the books. For this, I looked to a comparison in the actual Deep Space Nine series between Lieutenant Commander Michael Eddington and Odo himself. Both security officers, and both had a different approach to security, but Dynamic Vale is much more interesting than this one, I find. Too Long a Sacrifice was an exciting series that brought us back to the world of Deep Space Nine for the first time in over a decade. We saw a new story told in this universe, and reconnected with some of our favourite characters, especially Odo. With the death of Rene Auberjonois last year, this series serves as a fitting tribute to his character. One missed opportunity of the series is that we did not get to see much of our other beloved Deep Space Nine characters, such as Sisko, Dax, or O'Brien. This was Odo's story, but it would have been nice to see some of the other characters in action, since it's been so long since we received a new story about them. But hey, the sky's the limit. Maybe we'll get another story on Deep Space Nine sometime soon. If you enjoyed this comic book series, don't forget you can pick up all 4 issues via your local comic book store, or digitally via IDW Publishing's own website. We're also talking about the brand new Star Trek Voyager comic here on the channel, as well as the continuation of a Star Trek Year 5 with Captain Kirk and crew. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, as we'll be following all of us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. We're super excited to bring you more Trek content as we explore the final frontier. For now, I've been Captain Jack here on Trek Central, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends.